Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Tom Suter.
I'm the founder of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and want to welcome you today to ATARC's Thursday after lunch webinar series. And today we're going to talk about the future of data sharing within the Department of Defense. And of course, we will definitely be talking about the Joint All-Domain Command and Control JADC2 project. I think we'll talk a little bit about that. And before I welcome my panelists, I just wanted to welcome everybody today, all the attendees. I know you taking some time out of your busy day. Every Thursday we do this, and we seem to get a good crowd, and everybody seems to enjoy it. I'd like to thank Ashley Goodwin, Will LaForest, Jason Green, and the rest of the Confluent team. They've been a fantastic partner to ATARC. And today you can expect us, we're going to hear from the panelists real quick. We're going to do some intros. We're going to hear from the panelists. We're also going to have some Q&A, so you have an opportunity to chime in, and you can expect us to ask a poll question or two, and hopefully answer your questions. So I would like, if all the panelists can come on, we'll do some quick introductions, and then we'll get into the discussion. Wow, it looks like we're represented from all over the place today. How are you? Let me introduce Katie Arrington. Katie, can we get her video back?
There I am.
Hi, Katie.
Hey.
Looks like you're at the Pentagon again today.
Ta-da!
Yeah. Yes. That's not like some fake thing or something. We don't have.
No, this is not a digital. I'm in the studio, actually. Yes. So I'm spending most of my day. But hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Yep. I hope all is well.
Great. Thank you for coming. And then next, I'll introduce Robert Kiesler, Director of Data Science and Analytics at the Naval Information Warfare Systems Command. And Rob, are you out of your home today?
I am teleworking today, like I have been since March.
Yep. And where are you out of?
I'm out of Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh, it's beautiful down there.
You know, I live there, right?
I do.
When I'm allowed to go home.
Yep. And next we have Erica Dretzka, who's the lead data strategist, Office of Personnel Analytics, Data Science at the Department of Defense. Good to see you again, Erica.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me again.
I can't tell if you're in a conference room or your living room or.
Yeah, I'm actually in a little room in the basement of my apartment complex. So
oh, wow.
There are in and out. I really hope that there's not too much noise in the background.
No problem. Thank you for coming today. And then we also have with us Lieutenant Colonel Ron Sinikowski, Director of Data Capabilities at the U.S. Air Force. And I think you're like on the International Space Center, space station or something back there. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Working from home here myself as well, so got the background.
And where are you out of?
So our office is split between both the Pentagon and Joint Base Andrews over in Maryland.
Great. And last but not least, we have Will LaForest back at us. How are you doing today, Will? And I talk about where you are today too.
Well, hopefully no one will take offense. I don't think Ron will, but I'm in Aviamo Air Force Base in Italy. So
you actually are there?
No,
that's just the background.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. So let's maybe start with you, Erica. We're the Department of Defense is on sharing data, and if you could talk a little bit about just kind of where from your perspective, what your day job is, and how this is kind of where do you see us moving as a Department of Defense?
Sure, yeah, thank you. So Erica Dretzka, I'm the Principal Data Scientist at the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Readiness. Spent a lot of time over in the personnel, so I'm kind of, one foot in both camps there.
Sure.
So personnel readiness is one of the undersecretariats for OSD, so I am up at the OSD level. My initial introduction to the whole DoD data world was actually standing up a data science capability over at OPA, at the Office of People Analytics, and then to do the same thing over in the readiness construct. And so in readiness, of course, we're looking beyond personnel, we're incorporating equipment, we're incorporating supply chain and sustainment, So it has much more of a JADC2 spin to what we're doing. Pretty much everything we do is how do we get the warfighter as ready as possible for whatever the national defense says they have to do in a given time. So of course, the data, sorts of data that we're looking at are much more various than they are in the personal side. I have some really cool projects going in terms of basically along the whole data spectrum. So some are in the more nascent, the beginning stages, like, and then some are on the really highly strategic side, looking at systems dynamics and how are we incorporating, the strategic dimensions of readiness in the military world. So applying some really creative things. I'm really fortunate to have a great project working right now with actually some telemetric data, and that we're actually trying to tie the telemetric data coming off of planes with the readiness. Sorry, readiness, and also so how much are we spending?
Eric, I hate to interrupt you. We may have you, if you could call back on a cell phone. Your audio is a little sketchy and people are having trouble hearing you a little bit.
Yep, absolutely.
Take your time. I'll get back to you. Okay. So we'll just go to the next panelist. So maybe we'll go to you, Rob Kiesler. Kind of bring us your perspectives from where you are today.
Sure, sounds great. So for the past number of years here, I've been the director of data science down here for the Naval Information Warfare Center Atlantic here, based out of Charleston, South Carolina. We're one of many warfare centers for the Navy, and I've been quietly building a sensor data and AI workforce down here is my primary duty. So I have about a little over 250 people that report to me in our organization. So we're actually quite large, but we kind of keep it on the down low that we're around, but doing great things down here. My strategic purpose is really to help the Navy and the DoD writ large help revolutionize decision making and really focus on how we take human-centered but data-based approaches to doing that. So whether it's JADC2, whether it's any other logistics, maintenance, business system, how do we take all of that data and those human interactions and help make the best decisions for the Navy and for the DoD writ large?
Great, thank you. We won't tell anybody about anything, so it's between us here. Okay. Next, can we go with you, Colonel Sinkowski? You got it. There you
Absolutely. Go. Yeah, great. Thank you. So my role at SAPCO, our Air Force Chief Data Office, is the Director of Capabilities for Miss Eileen Verdreen, who's our Chief Data Officer for the Department of the Air Force. And our role as an office is really the implementation of the DoD data strategy. And so we have multiple lines of effort that are executing along that lines, starting with our strategy and governance structure, in terms of allowing all of our major commands and functional two letters an opportunity to make decisions around data. And it's also under our strategy and governance in which we have the most direct role in this data standards that are being discussed and worked out for the joint all domain command and control effort that really is a win, I think, for the department in moving the discussion from a weapons system to a network focused discussion around capabilities. And I think that discussion is going well as a lot of our senior leaders recognizing the value of data all the way up to Congress, as we see more and more language in the NDAAs as they come out. Yeah. And so it's an exciting time. We've got multiple use cases ongoing, a data management and analytics platform that we're making available to the Air Force. And, as we make enterprise data services a reality for the Air Force.
Fantastic. And we'll get into some questions later. And Katie, love to hear your perspectives. It's great we're bringing all this data together. What are some of the security risks for bringing all these systems together, and how have you guys been looking at it at Department of Defense?
So in the DoD, we have Advana. It's a platform where we bring all of the data analytics in from all the different services. So working to maintain security on that, that's the golden egg. And you have to realize, data in transit, all of what the different services are doing, trying to compile that and do it in a way that is useful to the warfighter. The challenges, and each of these individuals are working on programs that we need to figure out how do we get it to the warfighter and make those, give them the data to make those data-driven decisions in real time, but do it in a secure fashion. And it's, that overarching issue. So we have multiple efforts on security going on right now about that. We can't really talk too much about them here, but I think everybody on the call, the panelists know it is the priority. I can't say enough about my dear friend, General Krall, who really is spearheading the JADC2 effort. When he said, I want it we have to be, interoperable to make these decisions. There's no way around this. The challenge that we're seeing though, and to the panel, tell me if I'm wrong. So my purview, what my portfolio is, weapon systems, defense critical infrastructure, and the DIB, and the cyber oversight to all of that. As we move into these environments and we're trying to get the data, there are things that we have to make decisions on. And, the reality is we don't have an endless amount of money to work with. And I think, Rob and the Colonel can attest to this. We have a certain amount of money. What do we put it on? Do you put it on the security and hope that, everything stays safe? Or do you put it on the data so that you can move the data efficiently and get it gathered together enough to make data-driven decisions so the security isn't as necessary? And we're playing this balance, and Congress wants us to take weapon systems that are 20 years old legacy. They want to be able to impart and extract that data from them and put it into a joint environment. It's expensive. We have stuff still running on Cobalt. So we're balancing it act, but there's a lot going on. I mean, from the DIB to weapon systems on the security of this, but these people, they're doing the hard work.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Erica, if we can go back to you, maybe you're kind of a little bit shaky there, especially toward the end. If you want to repeat that, that'd be great. I think you're on mute now, or still on mute. There we go. We're good.
Okay. So essentially the projects that we're working on are really, and I'm really glad that Katie just mentioned Advana. We're working very closely with Advana and pretty much been an early adopter and trying to push data to them. I'm very deeply in the tactical side of the house, plus the highly strategic side of the house, some of the projects. We are working with some telemetric data from some planes. We have, in fact, I think some of the participants on that study are on the call right now, trying to tie resources, meaning budget, to operational impact of the maintenance and flight records. So really, really broad. And I think JADC2 definitely, it gives us the opportunity to put data science and analytics to the forefront of how we can actually, integrate all of us across all of DoD.
Thank you for that, Erica. And we can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome.
Will, last but certainly not least, love to hear your perspectives. I know you guys this is like your bailiwick here. So what would you recommend? And then you guys also work on the commercial side. So I'd love to hear your comments on this topic.
Yeah, and in addition to being the public sector CTO for Confluent, which, if you're not familiar with us, we're the Apache Kafka company, but I also do advise both commercial entities and government agencies, even separately from Confluent. And I would say that, that one of the, and I'm going to try to keep my preamble short because I think I, like most of the attendees, are really looking forward to hearing from the experts. But I will preface it by saying that one of the hardest things that I do see across government and commercial is actually data sharing. And I think, you know, what happens is when a program or a line of business thinks about data, it's usually to try and meet some specific need, to build a new app, for instance. And a lot of technology and organizational practice is built around this. So, you know, maybe I need to build a new targeting system. So let me collect the data I need and I store it optimally in some database for it. And I do whatever processing and analysis is required. But I don't tend to think about how to make that data widely and easily available to folks that I may not even be aware need it. And this happens in commercial as well. And the older the organization, the more data silos and integration points have built up because of this. But you know what? Honestly, this happens in new organizations as well. So, you know, LinkedIn, for example, they got themselves into this situation pretty quickly. And they had to break out by innovating and aggressive adoption of new approaches. I also think it's kind of interesting that DoD leadership, in my reading, has used Uber's approach as an analogy for JADC2 from a data perspective, because they're actually a company that has been even more than many startups sort of forward leaning about making data accessible through their lines of business, right? They have multiple apps for different services like riders and drivers, Uber Eats, machine learning, and they do have plenty of different databases, but one of the things they're very careful to do is make sure that all their data is published in these sort of real-time event streams. And this makes it sort of possible for independent lines of business and efforts to get what they need autonomously. And I think that's a key point, because what they wanted to do is remove data sharing friction and sort of the tribalism that exists when people start doing independent efforts without creating more data silos. So anyways, at the end of the day, I think it's obvious that we in the DoD, and I'm going to include myself we, because I work a lot with a lot of DoD customers, you know, have a lot more barriers than Uber or LinkedIn does, right? But all that being said, it is absolutely critical that we persevere and try and achieve the same sort of data sharing and innovation approaches that they are doing in commercial.
Yep. So the JADC2, that's like I call it like kind of a Lord of the Rings concept. What are going to be some of the challenges as each of the services are doing their own thing? What are going to be some of the challenges that would prevent this from reaching, you know, where we'd like to go? Katie, you got your hand up first.
Ooh, so
Yeah.
there are multiple challenges. First is you know, I do so it's no big secret, weapon systems vulnerabilities. So
Yeah.
that's part of my job. I don't want anybody to see my dirty laundry, right? So that's culturally a problem in the department. I don't want anyone to know my stuff, because I'll take care of it. Because then you have to be accountable to fix it. And when you start sharing the data, which we absolutely need to do, we have to get beyond the barrier, the cultural barrier between the department, between the services, that if there is something wrong in a weapon system and the data will show it, that is okay. We need to understand that to share the data, there is assumed risk, but risk is not a bad four-letter word. We need to be able to give each other that information in an exchange so that we can balance it out. And the only way to do that is the exchange of data. So if you take a defense critical mission, you know, EUCOM, if we are not exchanging all the data through all the different weapon systems and defense critical infrastructure that supports that, the combatant commander is at a loss. We have to give him the data. That is our job. He has to understand it. And with that, there's going to be some assumed risk. There are going to be things that the Navy is providing or the Army in that particular defense critical mission that the data might show that there's a vulnerability. The only way to make that decision to keep the OODA loop, you know, keep the human in the loop, is to put the data. So we have to culturally get beyond, you're going to see some things that aren't pretty. And that's okay. That's life. And you're going to have some things that, I mean, that's, I think, our biggest challenge is culturally saying it's okay.
Yeah. And thank you for that, Erica.
Can't hear
Gone
you.
silent, Erica. I don't know what.
I'm sorry.
There you go. You got it. Okay.
Okay.
Don't worry. I did that for 3
yeah.
minutes and I ran a webinar and I didn't realize I was on mute. So you haven't broken my record yet.
So I would also add to that, and I think that's an excellent point. You know, obviously at the OSD level, I think we're all dealing with that, you know, transparency of information to not only the decision makers, but also to the data owners, like the data stewards are always concerned about sharing it. But then also the standardization of how we talk about data. So, you know, we have these like big fancy things like the open data standards that the EU is starting to embrace and all those, but internally, like how do we talk about specific metrics? I mean, when we say MC rates, you know, much touted metric of the last decade, are MC rates the same for all aviation platforms across all services? Most likely, I mean, maybe that's a more simplistic metric than others, but how far do we go to try to standardize those while also allowing the services to retain their individuality?
Yep, thank you for that. And I'll go right to the Air Force. Colonel, you're setting all this up for internally to the Air Force. How are you going to liaise back to the JADC2? Do everybody spin does this all go through you? Do they go directly into this new system? I mean, how are you looking at that data governance?
Yeah, so the JADC2 is really a great construct in terms of being able to help make those decisions that Ms. Arrington mentioned around, you know, when it comes to whether it's tagging or the interface or the access controls, right? What we see right now, and this is, I think, at all levels, probably, I would suspect, across all services, is that, you know, leadership and, you know, our warfighters recognize that, you know, data being accessible in terms of advanced analytics is gonna help their operations, right? And so what we have a lot of happening right now is that, you know, with our culture of innovation and stuff, we have getting access to all new companies, and so it's like, yes, this can get me what I want, and so we end up, you know, duplicating a lot of efforts, you know, within our different mission areas.
Sure.
And since in many cases decisions haven't been made on what those standards should be for interfaces and access controls, and so it's making our environment a little complex in that regards. And so having a construct like JADC2 to help, you know, make that decision, not just for the Air Force, but for, you know, the entire department, is really going to, you know, be a benefit that our business mission areas can also, you know, derive from our warfighting mission areas. And so this year here, you know, is really one of the first years in our POM build for the Air Force in which we are, I would say, making enterprise holistic decisions around, you know, our approach to data, and, you know, giving a construct for people to, for our different MAGCOMs and stuff to be able to plug into. And I think we're going to see more of that as, you know, as time matures. You know, an analogy that someone shared with me that kind of resonated is that if you go back, you know, to 1910, 1920, you know, with aircraft, you're at that point being like, hey, there's something here in this capability. I know I need this plane that can, you know, do reconnaissance, ones that can like drop bombs and things like that, but you're still working out the entire like infrastructure. Like we didn't know we were going to need like a weapon system school or a sustainment depots and things like that. And so as we as a department are, you know, investing in these different technologies, you know, we're going to be able to, you know, start to make smarter, more purposeful decisions, I think, as a department, as we set up the constructs around that. And JADC2 is definitely one of them. And many folks probably heard, you know, in last year's, one of the briefings our SecCap in chief did to the HASC, you know, he was the one who mentioned, you know, that shift of from the weapon system construct to the discussion of network capabilities, and you know, and Congress received it well, right? I mean, they're getting it in that regards. I still think there's certainly more work to be done in that area, but in terms of being able to help folks align to that discussion of what the standards need to be and things like that, and it can be done. I mean, we see it done. It's being done today in our IC community, right? I mean, they have, made decisions on some of that same stuff that we, are and the rest of the department need to make decisions on. And so that's kind of where we're at right now.
One of
Great,
the things, can I add to that?
Sure, Katie.
One of the things is that, realistic expectations, right? This isn't going to happen overnight.
Sure.
You have a phase out, but you look at the department actually has done, it's a when you talk about Genesis and you talk about how the Alta and the Vista, and we combined the VA healthcare system with the DoD healthcare system. And, to transmit that was a huge effort to standardize. And you think the department knows how to do it. That's proof point. We can do it. It's just having the patience as each, GBSD is coming online, right? As we're going through this. So, okay, we're going to have the data analytics from that, but you probably aren't going to have it from Minuteman 2 for a minute. So we need to be patient and get through the process as we go through the evolution. But we have history of doing this. It's not foreign to us. It's just different.
Right. Rob, let's look at the Navy and how you're doing it today inside of the Navy, and then how is it going to work with the JADC2?
Sure. So the Navy is definitely taking the approach of trying to build out data services and architecture in a way that's going to support that JADC2 construct. As other speakers have alluded to, this is a hard problem. Some of these systems are old. Some of these systems weren't built to support sharing data or even publishing data. And so really getting through those barriers, I think, is going to be a struggle across the DoD and within the Navy and other things. But we're going for that services approach and really trying to go that way. And what I would see is really, I think this is a great opportunity for the DoD writ large to rethink the way that we've approached these problems in the past and take on some of the lessons learned from industry as they've transformed their infrastructures and their architectures to make better use of data for their decision making. We really try to get into this standardized, we want to go towards standards for everybody and everybody should follow this. But you don't see that as much in industry where they can be a little bit more agile in the way that they're able to take in data on the fly. And so I think, from my perspective and from a Navy perspective, I think we're seeing a lot of that and supporting a lot of that as well.
Thank you. And Will, this is right up your alley here.
Yeah, well, actually, I want to just follow on what Rob said around data standards. I think they are important, but specifically as it relates to all domain data. I mean, to try and come up with some sort of data model that supports every single domain and all the complexities it would take an infinite amount of time. It would be infinite, right? So I think Rob's right in that we don't want to over-rotate on trying to come up with those standards, right? What we want to do is make data easily accessible and publish lots of information about it and provide it via, like I said, real-time streams, like I think a lot of people alluded to it, but as well as leveraging APIs and then allow people to leverage that data. But to try to come up with a common data model is like mission impossible. And then I also like what Katie said, because one of the things that I've seen, even on the commercial side, when you're trying to get people to modernize and share data, you got to tap in legacy, old, crusty systems. Doing that without actually impacting those operational systems is hard, right? And so you have to look at techniques like CDC, change data capture, to sort of find the back door and then incrementally improve those things and move to modern technologies. Yeah. And then the last thing I'll say, and as someone who works for a software company and focuses on data all the time, I think it may be an anathema to me, but one of the biggest challenges I think we have in the DoD is actually just the complexity of the networking infrastructure. I mean, we got to support getting data from the edge and to the edge, and we have to share these thin pipes over these special networks. It's hard. I mean, just those pipes. So I think honestly, this isn't great for me, but I think we need to invest a lot in that infrastructure to make it possible to even use all the awesome technology that we want to use.
Yeah, complex problem.
Yeah.
We've gotten actually some good questions. Some of them that are going to ask. We got an intelligent audience out there, I guess. But how do you address the risk of presenting information as classified or by compilation or aggregation? It's hard enough to do it in your own organization, but now you're going to be offering these data sets to something beyond your control. I might start off with you, Erica, because I know you deal with personnel, and that's a very sensitive issue.
Yeah, this is really complex. In fact, this is one of our biggest issues when we talk about working with Advana, especially right now with COVID, right? I mean, we are by nature forced to work from home a lot at this point. So yeah, I mean, it's a huge problem. Everybody needs to work with the data as best as they can. When you do start aggregating those things, though, there's no real definition of when does it get to be too sensitive? And maybe Katie or somebody else has the magic answer for this, and I would love if that existed. I have tried to dabble in, is there a way to look at, is there an algorithmic way? Can we apply, weights of sensitivity and, but I think that I don't know if there's a way to automate it by any stretch. It's very complex though. And especially going from personnel now, you start to include the equipment and the supply chains, and it starts to really multiply. This is very hard.
Does anybody else want to offer into this? This has been an ongoing problem for a long time, and now you're sending your data to somebody else, and it might be part of this.
Well, that's been the issue. Our adversaries have, taken the aggregate of the data, right? They're pulling it from one source and another source, and they're compiling it. And we're incredibly transparent, whether we realize it or not. When we do things, one of my favorite, most recent ones is the executive order on pharmaceuticals. So we literally put out to the world, here are the pharmaceuticals that we are in desperate need of. Here's an executive order. So what do you think our adversaries went and did? They bought up every single company in that. And when we're talking about the data exchange, we live in an environment, and this is where, these experts, these are the people to solve it, right? The data, it's very hard in theater to get to a JWICS terminal. It's very hard in theater to get to a SIPR terminal, to get that information. And if we're the aggregate of the data takes it up to the high side, the very, very high side, how do we get it there? So all the data in the world doesn't help that guy in theater if he can't get access to it to make the decision, the commander or the battalion. So I think one of the things that really is important, the marking of the data is something that the department has got to get better on. New guidance on it. Industry's got new guidance on it. But I think we need to think outside the box. And I really think that as JADC2 comes along, let's not think about putting the data where we generally put it. How can we work with, in my brain, and I'm the comms person, right? End-to-end encryption to cloud capability so that the warfighter who's in that host nation with a really crappy bandwidth, right, can actually access and understand that, blanks happen behind me. We have to get to that point. I think that the aggregate is one thing, but getting it out is bigger. And the infrastructure is key on all of this, because big data servers in cloud, they got to be able to get to it.
Yeah, and we have another good question about, I remember looking at a spaghetti chart of the healthcare system for the VA and the DoD, and all these systems are impossibly tied together, and some of them are old, some of them really old, some of them are old, none new. Where are we on APIs? I haven't really, can we do a refresh? Where are we in APIs? Because we've been doing this now for a while. Maybe I can go to, Colonel Sinikowski. Where is the Air Force on that? I mean, there's a lot you guys are doing in COBOL. Yep. You've been doing it a long time. And where's the API strategy, and how are you in the department? I'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So APIs are definitely, a core part of the approach to data sharing. One of the things we're seeing right now in that regard specifically is when we go to make these connections for whatever specific use case that we're working, standing up those persistent connections so the data can flow to where we want it to. And well, let me just pause there for a minute actually and kind of pull on that thread in terms of end state. a lot of efforts right now, you know, the major use cases we're working on are very much, you know, people are just happy to get the data at all, right? And so a lot of efforts are a lot of people manually inputting data, pulling from one system, inputting another. So even getting like a standard persistent connection where you can just refresh the data every day is like a huge win, right? In you know, some of our systems already do have APIs in them. We also have secure file gateway transfers through DISA, the Kafka, obviously, is part of our platform one, and then there's several other vendor solutions that are being utilized. But in any case, you know, even that though isn't where we want to be, right?
Sure.
So you know, another analogy that I think communicates well about this flowing of data is that we need to be at that point, and not just for operational. I mean, I'm talking our business enabling mission requirements and things like that, where, you know, somebody logs into an ATM, right, and for a bank, and it's not their bank's ATM. You know, that those credentials are passed through the system and passed over to their bank, and they're allowed to withdraw money, right, even though it's not their particular bank's ATM. And that same idea of being able to do a machine-to-machine authentication of data so it can flow regardless of which system you're logging into, right? And without a human having to be in the loop, being like, oh, wait a minute, I got this request. Now, let me see if they're authorized, right? It's got to be, you know, at the speed of operations where the request is made, the machine-to-machine authentication is done, and then the data flows to that operator or the person trying to do the analytics, right? And so that's, you know, that's the vision of like what we're building to. And in terms of APIs, it's another one of those. We utilize them today. You know, our Kessel Run group has one that they're using in terms of pulling their data from their system into the vault and things like that. We've got them. We've done the same with our unified data library with USSF. And so they're out there. We utilize them in terms of our strategy. Again, there are you know, decisions that need to be made again in terms of requirements as we're acquiring our technology through our acquisition programs, in terms of you know, what the standards are going to be around them. But in any case, so I mean, and I'm not just talking just their standard APIs in terms, you know, we've got ones that pass your authentication and stuff that we utilize for the security aspect and stuff as well. But so it's definitely in our plan. It's in our, if you read our data service reference architecture that was published, you know, it's included in there. And, you know, it's definitely something that there's still more decisions to be made though.
Yep, of course. And Rob, I mean, if you're doing IoT and this is like got to be central to how do you collect data if you don't have APIs? I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Sure. And what I would say too is when you're in the DoD space, I'm an engineer by trade. We're an engineering organization. We talk about it in different ways. We don't really talk about it necessarily using the terminologies APIs all the time. We might say modular open systems architecture or some other DoD centric term for having that open system and having the interfaces there. So, I mean, we've been focused on interfaces, whether they're APIs or other data sharing mechanisms for years and years and years. I think what you see is really trying to modernize and make these systems have things like APIs so that you can get to the data. You know, that is a goal that we're pursuing. You know, we have the Jupyter system, which is built off of Avana. At the DoD level, it's the Navy's instance of that. So we're bought into some of those larger initiatives to make that data available and quality data as well. So and discoverable. So we are doing those things. It's just maybe not as explicit as saying we have an API strategy.
Right. And Will.
Well, I like what he said, Rob, about the APIs. I mean, we've been using services for a long time. Those are APIs, right? I'd like to touch on one thing that Erica and Katie both brought up, and this has to do with sort of security and authenticity of data. One of the things that I've spent a lot of time working on is establishing these sort of data fabrics. The notion there is, you know, you can publish data in one location and it flows to other places in the location. People can consume the data, do whatever they want to it, right? So Uber's a good use case of that. We're starting to see that pop up in government as well. But in the DoD, like one thing that's super critical, especially as we try to apply things like machine learning, we need to have the data that's published and made available have data lineage and provenance. Because with that, we can start doing things like weighted confidence scores on our machine learning. Because if we spit something out from machine learning and we have no idea, like I'm a human analyst, I have no idea where it came from. Like, are you really going to trust it? Or if you're on the edge and you get some data, like, you know, maybe we're moving to a point where there's so much data, we can't have res prods for every single piece of data. You need some way of understanding where it comes from. So I always, even in the commercial space, especially in financial services, I say, if you're using Kafka or another technology and you're publishing data, you need to attach data lineage and provenance to it. And then you can start doing some of those other things. But without it, you're undermining the value.
Great, great. Why don't we hit some poll questions really quickly? We got some good ones that I want to get out there. Well, like I said, I've got the most intelligent audience in GovIT out there, so we want to leverage that. Go ahead, Alyssa. Why don't you get the first question out? We'll start out kind of basic. How familiar are you with JADC2 and its importance? If everybody can answer that pretty quickly, we'll get to the next couple of interesting questions, but go ahead. What do we got, Alyssa? Yeah, I think people are in the fact-finding stage. Interesting. Okay, let's go to the next question. Next question for sure. And this is a good one. What are the biggest obstacles for making joint forces data collaboration and sharing successful? And just like leverages to whatever you're working on for the folks that are on here. We don't have an all the above, but. Okay.
Yeah, all of the above is kind of like cheating, isn't it, Tom? Right?
Yeah, it's a little bit cheating. I kind of like that. That got me through college. So yeah. Looks like it's kind of evenly distributed, right? Except for complexity of integrating multi-domain data. Any comments on that? Was there any surprises? No, I don't think we had too many surprises there. There's just a lot of problems there. Let's see, where do we want to go next? We've got a few good questions here. I've got one about zero trust. You know, you're going to be traversing lots of different networks to come to this common platform. Katie, you seem to be most energetic right off the bat. How do we, you know, maybe talk a little bit about what the department's looking at zero trust and explain it a little bit, and then some of the challenges and opportunities there.
So we're absolutely, zero trust has to become the way of the world. We've gone through, if any of you are familiar with the most recent NDAA 889, right, where we had to go and take out Huawei, Dahua, Hikvision, video surveillance equipment, and telecoms. And we keep going through this, right? We're rolling through when we find something that's wrong, a product, and inherently, you can pretty much guarantee every product that we buy in a COTS environment will end up, unless we have provenance, you know, we can grill all the way back. We have to have zero trust. We have to build it in, that we have to have the risk reduction strategies built around it so that we can have the free flow of data without worrying about, you know, oh crap, if I have to pull this out. I mean, imagine we go through this. Well, it's what we had to do with 889, pulling the cameras out of really secure environments because we didn't have zero trust. So we are absolutely moving in that direction. It's costly. Like everything else that we're doing, it isn't going to happen overnight. But I would say for the department, the way we're working, you know, the data, the ontology, the methodology, how to standardize it, using, in development of weapon systems to feed the data, DevSecOps and Zero Trust are going to be the ways that we go. And that's, that's where I see us going. Anyway.
Erica, do you want to add anything to that? Is that like kind of hit at your level yet? Or is that something you're feeling out, or?
Honestly, something I'm feeling out. I'm not as close to the infrastructure network side. I'm much more on the data flow side. But one thing she said registers, and that's the free flow of data. And I think I'm going to go back to something I think Will mentioned a little bit ago, which is having that. You have to have a common understanding of what the data attributes look like, how you use them, how they should be used, how they should not be used, the goodness of them, the sparsity. And there's a lot of that needs to happen. And when it comes to Zero Trust from a data perspective, I think there's also a lot of things that we need to build in to understand how to transition that from the infrastructure side to the data management side.
Rob, do you want to add anything?
I don't have as many specifics because I am not on the networking side, but we do have a lot of engineering and cyber folks here in Charleston that are working on that Zero Trust problem for both enterprise and warfighting networks. So it is a very critical thing that we are working toward here for the Navy.
Yeah, thank you. And Ron, how about yourself? I know you got containers. You're working on some of that with Nick. You want to add a little bit of color to that?
Yeah. Well, actually, I was hoping to maybe go back to that first polling question.
Sure.
We have quite a few individuals that perhaps still had some basic questions about the kind of purpose and what the big deal is,
there it is.
About JADC2. So I've heard of it, but unfamiliar with the details. So just in a kind of a quick, soundbite, that ability to have, operations across all of our domains, air, space, cyber, land, et cetera, and being able to coordinate that at the speed of operation. So like in a scenario where, let's say we're in a conflict and we lose a third of our capability, right? We need to have dynamically reconfigurable, C2 chains that are not dependent upon, oh, I need to set up this flow of data here, and then I need to go over, so you lose an AWACS, right? Like we need to have multiple routes where these kind of things can be, again, dynamically reconfigurable in operations across all of our domains. So that's kind of like the big deal of it, is because at the end of the day, our operational commanders need to have decision advantage, right? And in the Air Force, we describe that around our OODA loop, right? You orient yourself and observe and decide and act, and being able to do that quicker, where this data is flowing to where it needs to be with the analytics that need to be done. We need to do this in a matter of days at times, right? Not the weeks, months, or even, years to acquire some of these different technologies that, we have in the past. So.
Yeah, can I ask you a follow-up question to that? Where do you see like the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center as an opportunity? How's this all going to work with the Air Force in particular, but how would it work in this environment, the JADC2?
Yeah.
What do you think of, what do you know and what do you think it could do?
Yeah, so our I was literally on a call with them at noon today, looking at one of the AI natural language like search algorithms that they're using within the cyber world. And so our interface to date with the JAIC, at least in the CDO's office, has largely been use case driven. We've had some interaction with their logistics logistics under attack, and some of the efforts they're doing on the H-60 to do data, on the flight line real time. We've had some other discussions and exploring and expanding some of that maintenance. I know one of my colleagues, Senator Colonel Trejo, on the AI CFT, has more of a direct relationship there in terms of guiding some of our AI efforts with the JAIC. And so I think that it's probably not an area I'm knowledgeable enough to speak on more than that in terms of our interaction, but I know that they are definitely at the center of a lot of the construct. The last thing I'll say on it is I have seen an excellent OV1 and an operational view that DISA put out, which shows the tech stack, right, of data flowing in terms of being curated, and then all the AI stack on top of it, and that runs on the Joint Common Foundation. And so that was encouraging to see that outlined in that regards. And I think that some of those products are definitely going to be helpful in terms of us laying out our strategy and stuff as well.
Thank you. Katie, I'd love to hear your perspectives, because you're in all the corridors where all this kind of talk is going on. What do you hear, and what do you think?
Oh, the Jake and what they're doing and how they're, oh my gosh, they're amazing. I mean, I can't say enough. I work with them on a lot of the Trusted Capital program. I can't say enough good things about the Jake. I'm going to go to the Advana platform, right? And let's talk about the data. When we started that, the acquisition analytics, so we're using it for our DMAGs, so we can get the data and get it to the senior leaders. We reached out to the Jake, because what is the right amount of data? How do you make sure that the data is the right sourcing? That it's not I am concerned about false positives and false negatives in data. Our adversary is having some fun with us. So working with the Jake and really getting some key decisions made about how to look at it and the methodology and taxonomy with it. So the Jake is hugely impactful. Advana is as well in that same a good deal AI team there. I mean, Erica, I mean, they're phenomenal in my opinion, what they're able to do. What we have to, I think, and the Jake, Advana, and the services is determine there's a collective blank ton of data. What is the pertinent data that they need to make the decisions and not overflow? I mean, that's, I think, one of the things that the Jake is really focusing on is too much is too much sometimes. And we tend to, when we look at the analytics, we love to say all this beautiful, I mean, you could do a wall, we do it on our policy, how everything is interconnected. They have been really, really essential in drilling it down and saying, yeah, no, don't need that. Not going to use that. So love them. It's great. And we have some great leadership over there. And, but I'd say the same with the Advana team. They're doing a heck of a lot of analytics.
Yeah. Erica, do you work with the Jake at all? Do you collaborate, or in a committee or anything like that?
Yeah, so I work pretty closely with Advana. I've started to work a little bit with the Jake, had some conversations with them, specifically in terms of some of the projects that we're doing that are ones that they want to adopt and bring and start to socialize across the rest of DoD. But definitely, I second everything Katie just said. The Advana people are doing a lot of work around that. In terms of selecting which fields to bring in, it's a cat and mouse sort of problem in many ways, because we want to let the SMEs inform it, but then you also, I mean, you need AI to be able to tell you what these data look like. Should they be, do you need additional fields that are going to fix the errors in that or the sparsity of a certain field? And so it's a really complex problem. Feature selection, feature engineering, all of that is it's huge. Advana is asking me a lot of, okay, which fields should we be bringing in? And like I said, cat and mouse problem, but we're working through it data source by data source.
Great. And Rob, do you interface with the Jake much yet?
We do. So I actually sit on a number of their subcommittees for workforce, and then acquisition are the two primary ones I sit on. So I've been assisting them through some of that. We also work in the use case space. I believe just the same as my Air Force friend pointed out. So they've helped us with a number of use cases across the naval areas, and we also interact with them in a number of other capacities. But what I really like from the Jake is how they are starting to focus on how they can help the services and help entities scale. And that's really as their role, I believe, to really help us. Because like I said early on, I have an AI workforce, I have data scientists, I have AI engineers on staff who are working on the Navy programs of record. How can I empower them to really transform those programs of record with common tools so that we don't have to keep buying walls? And I believe that's really where the Jake is going to bring in some of that power. But they're definitely very valuable in helping flesh out use cases and develop these things.
Great. I didn't know when I asked that question. I didn't know how that got down to the folks. That's great. And Will, do you want to add anything to that? It's like, these complex relationships that are happening and how do you wrangle everything and pull it all together? Love to hear what you have to say.
Well, that's kind of a broad question, but I
Yeah,
guess
it's a broad one.
Start off by maybe talking about the Jake. I too think what the Jake is doing is great. And if you're looking, they're trying to take something that, for instance, not to bring it up again, but like, for instance, Uber's Michelangelo platform, which does much the same sort of thing and was very transformative on how they were able to rapidly apply machine learning. Now, the challenge that we have in the DoD, again, is it's different. So like, I think applying machine learning is great in the cloud, but I also think that we need to look for ways to push some of these models, these inferencing models and technologies, down to some of the edge as well. So looking at some of the new innovative edge compute platforms, something like a Hive cell, and then do sort of intelligent stuff at the edge, because again, those pipes are really, really important. So if you think about it, we can't necessarily afford to send all this training data and all the mission data back to some cloud to run a machine learning algorithm. We need to be able to push that down closer to where the data is collected and then be smart about what we do with the data. So
right.
I guess that's what I would say.
Thank you. And maybe to close the program, it tells you something I haven't brought up, like COVID-19 and remote work, probably the first time in about a year. What have we taken from this as far as data sharing, and what have we learned? And if everybody can just kind of maybe pull their one snippet out, that would be fantastic. How about we start off with you, Erica? Not to put you on the spot, but.
Oh gosh. The whole high-low side conversation is really important in this, and I think it's exposed. I do a lot on the SIPRNet, and so do my coworkers. So how are we still relevant, and like, are we overclassifying some things and underclassifying others?
Yeah, we could have another webinar on that. How about you, Katie?
Oh, I mean, Erica took it right. As we've in COVID, the biggest challenge that we've had is that I think, overclassify too much. We make it too hard. And it's, the data, getting access to the data is going to be, these people are brilliant on this panel. They're going to make the data come together and make sense. It's just getting it to the user, getting it to the operator in time. And how do you do that with the way our current networks are set? We've got to find a different way to do things.
I agree. How about you, Rob?
So I would say real quick that, it's been interesting as we've gone through the COVID things and we've gone to telework environments. I feel like a lot of managers and leaders led by watching. They would see what's going on, they would understand what's going on, and they didn't rely on data as much. It was a lot of gut feeling, and now they can't see it. And so how do you have that visibility into what's actually going on? And you have to start relying on data. And so I think it's transformed a lot of their thinking in ways that just the same way that it's transformed how we do IT.
Well, what did Peter Drucker say? If you can't measure, you can't manage it. It doesn't matter if you're in the office. If you don't know what the person's doing, you can't measure it. You're not going to be able to manage it. How about you, Colonel Sinikowski?
Yes, thanks, Tom. The two things really. So one, for the Air Force at least, it has definitely accelerated our collaboration capabilities, right? With such things as something even as simple as Teams, right? Which we weren't utilizing to the same scale that we are now. So that has been a force multiplier, across the force. And now at the same time, we have a lot of analytic efforts around COVID, probably similar to all the services. And, you know, one of the things that was particularly striking was the ability to consider and look at access to our workforce, right? Access to our own people, and being able to, you know, communicate to our senior leaders and help make informed decisions around, you know, so COVID itself drove a lot of, you know, stress up in our, you know, for our different service members, especially mill to mill and, you know, dual working parents and things like that, where, you know, you're balancing the, you know, kids at home, learning from home and everything like that. And so I think that in a lot of ways, though, because of the serious nature of that issue, it drove our senior leadership to even invest that much more into making data available so they can make decisions and, you know, support our force. And so I'd say that, you know, our COVID effort on Project Brown Heron led the way in opening, you know, data access and data sharing in a lot of ways at that 4-star Glassdoor's level that other programs have benefited from and are continuing to benefit from.
Great, thank you for that. And Will, you get the last word.
Well, I'm going to avoid COVID. I'm just going to summarize it by saying data sharing is really hard. It's even harder in the DoD, but it's more important. So I'm just thankful for the efforts of the panelists to make JADC2 happen.
Great. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I want to once again thank Katie, Robert, Erica, Ron, and Will. It's been a great discussion. It's gone by so quickly. Thank you all for your time and have a good weekend. Next week, we have a few things going on, but we're really excited to have our virtual cloud summit. And I think we've got Paul Puckett, Director ECMO Army CIO G6 is going to be our keynote. We've been working on trying to get Paul. Our schedules haven't worked out, but we've got a wide variety, civilian and DoD. We're going to be talking about the state of cloud. So we got a great lineup for you, and we will see you on February 2nd. I believe that's a Tuesday from 1:30 to 3:45. Thank you for your time and have a good weekend.